everybody, welcome back. I'm Beebs Kelley. Thank you so much for joining me today. 2024 was definitely rough for the Sussexes. I mean, what year recently hasn't been pretty rough, but 2024 was pretty bad. And today we're going to take a look at Prince Harry's lowest points throughout this last year. From a professional, if you could call it that, or rather maybe public image perspective, I think the biggest standout may just be the ESPY Pat Tilman Award controversy. Because the backlash was so big and so loud, military communities, veterans, and athletes all wondered what they were thinking exactly, selecting Harry, of all people, to receive this award. To make it more painful for Harry on top of it, it was that military community that he kind of felt like was his last connection or last sort of safe place where he felt respected and felt part of that community. That community was mad about this choice as well. And so I think he felt all the more sort of threatened by this. It was very upsetting to him by all accounts from sources close to the couple at the time, which we've now found out a lot of the times that's just Harry and Meghan popping an email over to People magazine because they forgot to remove their signature from the email a few times this last year. But even Pat's mother accurately pointed out that the award aims to not only provide support and acknowledgement, but opportunity to the recipient. And Harry doesn't need funds or exposure, so it's robbing a more worthy recipient of help. It wasn't just tone deaf, it didn't really make sense to people. It also sparked a conversation culturally, once again, which we do every awards season for celebrities in general. But in this arena, the ESPYs were kind of safe from that conversation for a long time about like giving wealthy people awards and recognition. Like, how come we have to spend time doing this? Or why are we doing this all the time? The ESPYs were kind of separate from that and secluded from that conversation because everybody recognizes that athletes, regardless of privilege or not, spend a lot of time and are very dedicated to their sport and being physically fit and reaching optimization and all of these things. It takes a lot of work. It is an arena where it's easier to see the hard work that those people put in to their sport and to their athleticism and whatnot, and their talent is a little bit more easy for people to see and respect as like, yeah, they should get an award or recognition in some way, shape, or form. Athletes, a lot of people view as good role models, if nothing else, for the dedication and discipline that they exhibit in being able to perform at these high levels and whatnot. It was a little bit different than the way people viewed celebrities getting awards and patting each other on the backs and whatnot during award seasons. But Harry changed that, and a lot of people were irritated about it. A lot of the athletes felt like it took away from their experience at the ESPYs and took away from the respect that people once had for the ESPYs. He kind of muddied the waters there. And he brought the ESPYs into that conversation, which people were displeased about. People who participate in the ESPYs and the athletes were displeased about this. Now the ESPYs are seen as just another situation where very privileged people are awarded anything, really, and everybody views it as another award that they don't need. Additionally, the stark contrast to the real royals who spent their year handing out awards like Earthshot Prize and others. It just demonstrated and brought to mind yet another massive difference between the Sussexes and the royals like Prince William, for example. Harry had every opportunity to have the award go to Invictus as an organization instead of himself, Harry the individual. And he didn't. It only revealed his selfish side, and he even looked embarrassed doing it. Harry and Meghan also got roasted for leaving the event early in a disruptive manner. So that was definitely a big low point for Harry, and I think one that really set in motion some of his greater, more outwardly directed frustrations throughout the year. As we saw, his demeanor had a big shift this year from his usual sort of defiant self to what we saw towards the end of the year, which was pushing Meghan a bit out of the picture, trying to separate himself from her, and clearly a lot more frustrated with things. He couldn't really hide his frustration on his face as the year went on. Following his turbulent experience at the ESPYs, another frustratingly empty interview with him aired over the summer, I believe it was, where he complained a great deal, typical, but also to everyone's shock and dismay, he blamed the rift with his family on his battle with the press. Which is just absurd, and literally no one accepted this, except the interviewer, I suppose, who didn't push back on that very much at all. 2024 saw a really strong shift for the Sussexes in terms of press coverage as well. More often than not, we saw mainstream outlets calling out the weird and unappealing antics as well as the fails that the Sussexes were enduring. For Harry, who has always been more accustomed to a sympathetic view from the press, the last few years have clearly been a shock for him that have sent him into a defiant, angry state where he irrationally believes that he and the Meg deserve exclusively positive press. And he seems to have blinders on to this, not fully understanding the situation and his unreasonable expectations, how insane that really is to think. But furthermore, this year, seeing those mainstream outlets also being critical of the couple was a frustrating and bitter pill to swallow for him. That it's not just these fringe commentators or royal correspondents and experts, which he enjoys complaining about and discrediting whenever he has the opportunity. It wasn't just YouTubers and social media, but now it's everyone. The mainstream outlets are also on to Harry and Meghan and don't care for their antics. Another low point this year for Harry came from within, in a different form, one that was much more personal and indicative of deeper problems behind the scenes for he and the Meg. Within their relationship, when he was quite literally pushed to the background during the Nigeria trip and countless other times this year. The Meg, for example, in this moment wouldn't move to let Harry have enough standing room for this photograph. You can see the displeasure on Harry's face in this moment where he's trying to shift forward a little bit and she appears to elbow him back to not come forward and get a space. And she also doesn't create space for him. Very revealing for Meghan, who tries to show that she is so touchy-feely and caring and loving and mothering Harry at every turn. When push comes to shove, she's not going to let him ruin her pictures. Oh no, bony elbows out. It's rough. It's hard to watch. I do feel bad for Harry in moments like this, but then I'm reminded of Spare. You can't really feel bad for somebody who does that. But this wasn't the only time that this happened. She also appeared to cut him off while he was speaking. This was caught on camera a few times throughout the year. She also had the hand demand from the Meg where they were about to greet the Vice President of Colombia, and Meg just says, hand, and Harry gives her his hand so that they can be seen holding hands everywhere they go. Not only did we see on Harry's face the displeasure and the despondency coming through, but it also, upon reflection, probably hurt his pride to some extent. His overinflated ego would have taken a hit from things like that. To be seen toddling behind her, being bossed around, being taken advantage of, really, and pushed into the background, for somebody who was used to being the focal point, has got to be a difficult thing to deal with as a man, as somebody who was a prince. But just in a relationship situation in general, it's not very fair to him. The entire Nigeria trip, for example, was initially booked and publicized as Invictus business and billed as Invictus business, meaning their expenses were billed to Invictus, no doubt. And the entire trip ended up turning into the Meg because every single event, multiple times a day, she made comments about her ancestry. And so all the press focused on that instead of on Harry and the Invictus events, or promoting Invictus, or talking about Invictus at all. Of course, that was the more sensational headline compared to Invictus, unfortunately, but it just undermined Harry's efforts, and it undermined his purpose for being there on the trip altogether. He was very overshadowed, and he didn't exactly look pleased about it. By the end of the trip, he was serving as dejected prince. The same look he had by the end of the Colombia trip, too. And this may have been exactly what led to what appears to be his big pull back from the Meg this fall. It was clearly not the best year for their relationship, but from a business perspective, Harry also had a number of fails and struggles that have led to headlines like these. In case you forgot, Harry is the CIO, the Chief Impact Officer of BetterUp. Not a great title for this man, for a company which has turned out to have a very negative impact on its very own employees. They've branded it a horrible place to work with a really toxic environment, and Harry, in true hypocritical fashion, has spent time preaching endlessly about how much employees should just leave their jobs if they're not happy. Whee! Talking about burnout, which he likely has never experienced, at least not to the level the rest of us have. It's not a great look having your name attached to a company like that, especially as the Chief Impact Officer, getting paid £800,000 a year to just show up occasionally and put your name to it, when in reality it's apparently a horrible place to work and rather traumatizing. I guess that is on brand for the Sussexes though, isn't it? Of course, we cannot mention Harry's year of rejection without Polo, his pet project that should have never seen the light of day. It's been completely panned with savagely negative reviews. It's painted a very negative picture of not only the sport, but also of Harry. It's only enhanced his negative traits and negative image to the public, one that seems cruel, not only to his family, but to animals as well. The fact that Harry thought that this would be a good idea just shows how out of touch this man really is. Seriously, a documentary about polo that was sort of a reality show hybrid is probably the worst idea for a show in 2024 we have seen. It was all flops though this year. It would be easy to summarize 2024 as all flops on all fronts. With a year that started with what turned out to be empty promises to see his father as much as possible after finding out that the king was battling cancer, Harry has failed at his business endeavors, attempts to warm the public's view of him, his family relationships, his personal relationship with Meg. All of his projects and efforts this year, they haven't just flopped. They've been strongly rejected by the public. Because of this, the very last single thing Harry has going for himself, that he was charming and likable, allegedly, has begun to fade away. Harry doesn't seem very likable anymore, at all. Spare did a lot of that legwork, of course, but this year really finished it off. What did you think of Harry's year this year? Be sure to subscribe so you do not miss accompanying episodes about Meghan's low points and peak cringe throughout 2024 and more. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have a happy day ahead, and I will see you next time. Bye!